John Wayne Gacy, mass murderer, serial clown. He's from Winterest, Iowa. The 52-year-old serial clown started with 1 kill and ended with 33 deaths. That's it. That's all. Hi, I'm Jeffrey Rock, and today we're talking about John Wayne Gacy. Gacy, also known as the Killer Clown, wore a clown suit as he killed his victims under the persona of Pogo the Clown. As a child, Gacy and his siblings were horribly abused by a drunk father that used a razor belt on the children if they showed the slightest form of misbehavior. Gacy also had a heart condition that made him unable to play with the other children at his school. Because he wasn't able to exercise due to his condition, his father would call him names like pansy and queer. In 1949, Gacy's father was informed that his son and another boy had been caught sexually fondling a young girl. As punishment, Gacy was whipped by his father with the razor belt. The same year, Gacy himself was molested by a family friend, a contractor who would take Gacy for truck rides, then fondle him. Gacy never told his father about these incidents, as he was afraid the father would blame him. During his senior year, Gacy attended 4 high schools and never graduated. During this time, he realized that he was attracted to men. In his role as a mortuary attendant, his first job after graduating high school, Gacy slept in a cot behind the embalming room. In this role, he observed the morticians embalming dead bodies and later confessed to the fact that one evening, while alone, he had climbed into a coffin of a deceased teenage male, embracing and caressing the body before experiencing a sense of shock. The sense of shock prompted Gacy to call his mother the next day and ask whether his father would allow him to return home. His father agreed, and the same day Gacy drove back to live with his family in Chicago. Upon his return, despite the fact he had failed to graduate from high school, Gacy successfully enrolled in Northwestern Business College, from which he graduated in 1963. Gacy subsequently undertook a managed trainee position within the Nunn Bush Shoe Company. After serving 18 months in Iowa State Reformatory for sodomizing a boy, John Wayne Gacy was paroled and returned to Chicago to rebuild his life. However, while in prison, John's father had died of cirrhosis of the liver, and he was not notified until 2 days after. When he found out, he started crying uncontrollably, and when he requested to leave for his father's funeral for a couple of days, his request was denied. Impressed by the adaptation to his new life, John's mother bought him a ranch-style house just outside Chicago, in which she maintained a 50% interest. He moved in and started a company business, to which he would only hire teenage boys to satisfy his temptations. He was convicted of 33 murders, the most in American history. 29 bodies were found underneath his house, and the rest were found dumped in a river. Gacy's murders were some of the most torturous and sadistic murders in all of American history. The victim normally died through beating or suffocation. The victim would have been drugged and raped before dying. He had 2 main plans to kidnap his victims. His first scheme was simple, yet effective. What he would do is he would approach a young gentleman from the ages of 15 to 22, offer them work with good pay. When the boys would accept, they would go to his home and do whatever work Gacy had promised them. Then they would be drugged, and brought to his home into the garage until they regained consciousness. He would rape the young boys and then murder them, normally through suffocation. His other method was rather bold. He would approach the young men, dressed as a detective. By saying that he needed them to come for an investigation, they would normally comply. After the victim died, he would take the body and put it under the crawl space, then let it decompose, until he ran out of room, so he had to start dumping them in the nearby river. I'm one of John Wayne Gacy's psychiatrists. Gacy's childhood was rough. young boys usually look up to their fathers, and Gacy's father was no real role model. He was an alcoholic who beat Gacy on a regular basis. Gacy even had to watch his father as he beat his mother. Gacy's beatings were so brutal that he was in the hospital regularly, suffering from blackouts and seizures and other things. His medical condition was never truly diagnosed, so Gacy's father always accused him for faking his illness, even though he was lying helpless on his hospital bed. Gacy was also bullied in school because he was overweight due to a congenital heart condition that he had. When Gacy grew up, being charged with assault, there were many cases where he was examined for psychological problems. On September 3rd, Gacy was ordered to have a psychiatric evaluation, where he was examined for 17 days, I believe. The doctors concluded that Gacy had antisocial personality disorder, or ASPD, and that the treatment was unlikely to help. They said that Gacy would most likely struggle, and his behavior would ultimately bring him to repeated conflict. In the year before Gacy's final trial, Gacy spent over 300 hours undergoing psychological tests at Menard Correctional Center to determine whether he was mentally competent to stand in his trial. Gacy attempted to convince the doctors that he had multiple personality disorder. His lawyers went to trial to plead not guilty for Gacy's charges because of his multiple personality disorder. And he had other doctors from his past come in to testify that Gacy was paranoid schizophrenic who suffered from a multiple personality disorder. After Gacy's execution, his brain was removed and examined by Dr. Helen Morrison, I believe, who had interviewed Gacy and several other serial killers to try and figure out the common personality traits of these people. An examination of his brain, however, showed no abnormalities. Gacy was sane through and through, as far as we know.
Gacy's the kind of person that you look at and think he seems fine, and have thought that the thing I would take from it is a hatred of clowns. What Gacy did was indescribable and inhuman to the lengths. I can't describe. I'm honestly glad that he is dead. For what he did, he deserved it. I was there when he was arrested. I was there when he was tried. And I was there when he died. John Wayne Gacy was probably the worst person I have ever met. When the media got a hold of his bodies and released it to the public, the community was outraged, to say at the least. I remember being one of those interviewers and all of the people thanking me for finally getting the guy. I was glad to put him away. I just wish that I could have gotten him sooner, so not as many people had to die. The court case was an experience. He admitted his guilt, then he said he didn't do it, and had evidence that he pleaded insanity. He did all he could to not get the death sentence, but his efforts were useless. I remember hearing that his final meal was a basket of fried chicken, some french fries, fresh strawberries, and a Coke. I still remember his final words to this day. He looked the doctor in the eyes and said, "Kiss my ass." Then the doctor introduced the injection. Gacy died on May 20, 1994.
Hi, my name's Barry Buscelli. John Wayne Gacy was a strange one. He was short, always had his hair slicked back. His shoes were always scuffed up and his clothes were a little ragged. One day I went up to him and I asked him, "What is your name?" He looked at me in a strange way and he said, "John Wayne Gacy." He said it very skittishly. It was very strange. Right at that moment, we shook hands, and I knew he was different. He was different from everyone else. I knew that. And most people didn't know that he was a talented singer. He could take the breath away from you and anybody else. His singing was absolutely amazing. It was Christmas time in about 1950s, I think. One of those years. Really hard to remember. It's been a while. We were trotting through the snow, and one of our neighbors asked if we could come in, or invited us over for dinner. It was like a dinner party or something. During the night, there was singing and dancing, and so I stood up and I said to the crowd, "Ladies and gentlemen, John Wayne Gacy will now sing O Holy Night." He poured it out, his soul and everything. It was absolutely amazing. He touched people in ways that they never knew they could be touched. People were crying and laughing and just absolutely amazing. The emotions he brought out in people, nobody could hold it in. At that moment, or after that, we went our separate ways around 1959. I was 18 at the time, and he was 17. He's a year younger than me. We kind of didn't really talk after that. I mean, every once in a while we would keep in touch, but we really just went our separate ways. After high school, he went off, and I think he did some time for some harassment or something like that. I remember getting a letter or two. But then after that, after his father died, something changed. He wasn't the same anymore. I really didn't see that coming from him. I mean, killing all those innocent young men and raping them? I mean, he had his own business, and he was a clown for, the little kids and stuff. I mean, a man that is so involved in the community, how could he just kill all those men? It really doesn't make sense to me. I mean, growing up with him, he did not show signs of that at all. I would have never expected that. I know the things he did was terrible, but really, my friend, I grew up with this guy. I really never saw this coming from him. I mean, helping those kids out with the sad days, being a clown, starting that business and running it so well, giving so many people jobs, usually his victims, kind of sneaky and cruel. And the way he pretended to be a cop, man, does that guy got balls. He really got balls. Such a talented man. What a waste. I just can't believe the things he did. I can't imagine.
My name is Jeffrey Rignall. I remember it clearly. I wish I could forget it. I was walking to one of my favorite bars when this man drove up and offered me a joint. So I thought this guy was pretty cool and I could have somebody to smoke with. I thought, why not? I went into his car, and then suddenly I remember a rag being placed over my mouth. After that, it went black. Later, I woke up in some dark room in shock. Then I was beaten, and when I woke up the next time, I woke up in the river. I thought I was dead. When I could barely stand. When I got home, I told my girlfriend what had happened, and she took me to the hospital where I stayed a week. The police heard about my story, but they didn't file an arrest till later. I can never forget, no matter what he did to me, and probably what he's done to many other men.
I am standing where John Wayne Gacy had buried 4 bodies. One of those bodies was Robert Peace. They were buried around here. From that spot. He realized that he didn't have enough space as crawl space at his house, so he decided to dump him right here.
Serial murder, Gacy was successful in being able to get away with 33 murders until his arrest in 1978 and death in 1994. Let's take a moment to recall his victims' names. Timothy McCoy, 15, January 3rd, 1972. John Bukovich, July 29th, 1975. Daryl Sampson, 18, April 6, 1976. Randall Reffitt, May 14th, 1976. Samuel Stapleton, May 14th, 1976. Michael Bowen, June 3rd, 1976. William Carell, June 13th, 1976. Rick Johnston, 17, August 6th, 1976. Kenneth Parker, October 24th, 16, 1976. William Bundy, 19, October 26th, 1976. Gregory Godzik, December 12th, 17, 1976. John Zizek, 19, January 20th, 1977. John Prestige, May 20, March 15th, 1977. Matthew Bowman, 19, July 5th, 1977. Robert Gilroy, 18, September 15th, 1977. Russell Nelson, 21, October 17th, 1977. Tommy Bowling, 20, November 18th, 1977. William Kindred, 19, February 16th, 1978. Frank Langdon, 19, November 4th, 1978. James Mazzara, 21, November 24th, 1978. And Robert Heist, 15, December 11th, 1978. He also has 8 unidentified bodies ranging from the years of 1974 to 1977, found between those decades. His body decomposed beyond recognition. John Wayne Gacy, a man or a monster? Though his physical appearance, he was human. We may never know.
Ring, ring, ring.